I'm Madeline, 32, and I thought my dad's 60th birthday party would be a night to remember for all the right reasons. But then my brother stormed in late and drunk, clutching a beer like it was his lifeline. Before I could process it, he raised his glass, smirked, and said, "You're such a failure." Then he tossed the beer right at me. The cold liquid splashed onto my dress, my face dripping down as the room went dead silent. My mom rushed to him, grabbing his arm, muttering, "It wasn't intentional." Oh, it was intentional. Everyone knew it. I simply smiled, slowly wiped the icy beer off my face, and quietly returned to the party as if nothing had happened. But inside, I had already decided to act. That night, I did something that would change everything in ways no one could have predicted. The next morning, a short message appeared, enough to leave the whole family stunned. The game had only just begun. Before we dive into my story, tell me, what time is it where you are watching this, and which city are you in? I want to know just how far my story has traveled. The coffee in my mug was cold, but I barely noticed, staring at my laptop screen in our Albuquerque kitchen. I was trying to polish a pitch for a national magazine, a freelance contract that could finally get my name out there beyond local news. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but my mind was elsewhere. My brother Caleb had already blown up my phone with a text, his words sharp and demanding. "You canceled my lease. Fix it, Madeline." I'm not joking. No mention of his outburst last night, no hint of regret. Just the same entitlement I'd dealt with for years. I set the phone down, my chest tight, trying to push his words out of my head. I'd been propping Caleb up forever. His downtown apartment, I paid the rent when he swore he'd land a steady gig. His credit card debts, I cleared them after he blew his savings on music gear he never touched. Last month, he asked for $4,000 for some tour with his band, claiming it was his big break. I said no, tired of funding his empty promises. He didn't like that, and my parents backed him up. My mom always called after his messes, insisting he was trying his best. My dad stayed quiet, but his silence felt like agreement. They expected me to keep fixing things, to keep saying yes. But last night, changed that. My phone buzzed again, a voicemail from my mom. I played it, her voice soft but pressing, cutting through the quiet morning. "Madeline, Caleb's really struggling. He's trying so hard to make it work. Can you just talk to him?" I clenched my jaw, the same tired excuse. Justin, my husband, walked in from the garage, a toolbox in hand from his latest project. He heard the voicemail and shook his head. "She's already at it," he said, setting the toolbox on the counter. "Does she even care what he pulled?" I didn't answer, my eyes fixed on the phone. Justin had been calling out Caleb's behavior for years, telling me my family leaned on me too much. I tried to focus on my pitch again, the cursor blinking on my screen. This contract was my shot at something bigger, national stories, a real byline. But Caleb's text kept burning in my mind. "Fix it, Madeline." Like I was the one who broke his life. I thought about all the times I'd bailed him out, paying his phone bill when it got cut off, covering studio time he skipped, even replacing a guitar he pawned for cash. He never thanked me, just acted like I owed him. My mom's voicemail echoed her words, twisting the knife. She didn't see the years I'd carried him, only his struggle now. Another buzz pulled me out of my thoughts. An email from a colleague at the paper, the subject line, vague. "You see this?" I opened it, expecting notes on my pitch. Instead, it was a screenshot from a local Facebook group, a post about someone in town not being who they seem. No names, but it hit me like a warning. I told myself I was overthinking it, that it couldn't be about me. Caleb's text was still unanswered, his anger practically pulsing through the screen. I looked up at Justin, now pouring himself coffee. "He's not going to stop," I said, my voice low. He nodded, his eyes steady. "You don't owe him anything," he said. "Not after what he did." He was right, but the weight of my family's expectations pressed harder than ever. I didn't know then that Caleb was already setting up something worse, something that could hit me where it hurt most. But as I closed my laptop and stared at my phone, I knew I wasn't backing down. The afternoon sun poured in harshly, casting sharp shadows across my living room. I was still reeling from Caleb's morning text, his demand to fix the lease I'd canceled, when my phone rang. His name glared on the screen. I hesitated, my thumb hovering, but I picked up, bracing myself. "You think you can just cut me off like that?" Caleb's voice was sharp, slurring slightly like he'd been drinking again. "You're going to regret this, Madeline. I'll make sure everyone sees you for who you are." The threat hung in the air, heavy and vague, before he hung up. I stared at the phone, my pulse racing, his words echoing in my head. What did he mean by everyone? I barely had time to process when the doorbell rang. Justin, my husband, was at the kitchen table scrolling through his phone, but he looked up, his brow furrowed. "You expecting someone?" he asked. I shook my head and opened the door to find my mom standing there, her face tight with worry. She didn't wait for an invitation, stepping inside and launching in. "Madeline, why are you doing this to Caleb?" she said, her voice low but sharp. "He's panicking. He got a notice to vacate his apartment. You know he's trying to get his music career off the ground. Why can't you just help him?" I stood there, stunned, my hands clenching at my sides. She didn't mention what Caleb had done, didn't acknowledge how he'd humiliated me. It was always about him. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "He's not my responsibility," I said. My mom's eyes widened like I'd said something unthinkable. "He's your brother," she shot back. "He's struggling. You've always been the strong one. Can't you see he needs you?" Justin stood up, his chair scraping the floor. "She's done enough," he said, his tone firm but calm. My mom ignored him, her gaze locked on me, waiting for me to cave, like I always had. I didn't. I just pointed to the door, my throat tight. She left without another word, but I knew this wasn't over. Back at my laptop, I tried to refocus on my magazine pitch, the one that could change my career. I was halfway through a sentence when an email popped up from my editor at the paper. The subject line stopped me cold: "Contract concerns." I opened it, my heart sinking. "Madeline, we need to discuss your freelance contract," it read. "There's been some chatter online about financial issues tied to your name. The magazine's concerned about credibility. Can we talk?" My stomach dropped. Financial issues? I hadn't missed a bill in years, hadn't taken a loan since college. My mind flashed to Caleb's threat: "Everyone sees you for who you are," and that screenshot from my colleague this morning, the vague post about someone in town. I opened Facebook, scrolling through the local group my colleague had mentioned. There was nothing new, just the same cryptic post about someone not being who they seem. No names, no details, but it felt like a knife aimed at me. I thought about Caleb, his anger, his threat. Was he behind this? I clicked through his profile, but it was locked down, no recent posts visible. My fingers shook as I typed a quick reply to my editor, promising to clear things up. Justin came over, looking at my screen. "What's going on?" he asked. I showed him the email, my voice barely steady. "I think Caleb's trying to sabotage me," I said. He frowned, pulling me into a hug. "We'll figure it out," he said. "He's not going to win this." I closed my laptop, my mind racing. Caleb's threat wasn't just empty words, it was a promise to hit me where it hurt my career. I didn't have proof yet, but the pieces were falling into place. My mom's visit, her blind defense of him, only made it worse. The Albuquerque sky was turning dark as I sat on the couch. My laptop open still rattled from my mom's visit, and that email from my editor. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Brooke, my friend and colleague at the paper. "Call me. Found something you need to see it read." My heart sank. I dialed her number and she didn't waste time. "Madeline, check the local Facebook group. Caleb posted something about you," she said, her voice tight. She sent me a screenshot, and there it was, a post from Caleb in the Albuquerque community group, liked by 12 people. "Some people act like they've got it all together, but they're drowning in debt. Don't trust the facade," it read. No names, but the timing, the jab, it was aimed at me. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. This wasn't just a vague post anymore. It was a deliberate hit at my reputation. As a journalist, my credibility was everything, and that magazine contract I was chasing depended on it. Caleb knew that. He'd seen me work late nights, pitch after pitch to build my career. And now he was trying to tear it down just because I'd stopped funding his life. I forwarded the screenshot to Justin, my husband, who was in the kitchen grabbing a glass of water. He read it, his jaw tightening. "He's out of line," he said, sitting beside me. "This could hurt your contract. We need to shut this down." I nodded, my mind racing. I logged into the bank portal, my fingers moving on instinct. Caleb's credit card, the one I'd added him to years ago to help him out, was still active. He'd been charging meals, gas, even bar tabs on it, never paying a dime. I froze the card, cutting him off completely. It felt like a small victory, but it wasn't enough. Caleb's post was already out there spreading doubt about me. I couldn't let it sit. Justin leaned over, looking at the screenshot again. "You should report this to the group admins," he said. "And maybe the band he's been begging gigs from. They need to know who they're dealing with." I hadn't thought of that, but it made sense. Caleb's music career was his only leverage, and if he was playing dirty, I wasn't going to play nice either. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a text from my mom. "Madeline, you're being too hard on Caleb," it read. "He's got nowhere to go now. Why can't you help him?" I groaned, tossing the phone onto the couch. Not 5 minutes later, another text came in, this time from my cousin Amy. "Heard about Caleb's apartment? You really cut him off? That's harsh." Then another from my aunt. "Family sticks together, Madeline. Don't push him away." I stared at the messages, my blood boiling. None of them mentioned Caleb's post, his lies, or how he'd tried to ruin me. It was all on me, like always, to fix his mess. Justin read the texts over my shoulder, shaking his head. "They're ganging up on you," he said. "You don't deserve this." We sat down at the kitchen table. My laptop opened, the Facebook post still glaring at me. Justin grabbed a notepad, his engineer brain kicking in. "Let's make a plan," he said. "First you reply to your editor, explain, this is a personal attack, not truth. Then we draft a message to the band's manager. Caleb's been bragging about that gig for weeks. Let's see how they feel about his lies." I nodded, feeling a spark of clarity. I started typing an email to my editor, keeping it professional but firm, promising to clear up any doubts about my finances. Then I found the contact for Caleb's band manager, ready to lay out what he'd done. I wasn't going to let his lies destroy my career, not when I'd worked so hard to build it. As I hit send on the email, another message from my mom popped up. "Caleb's devastated," it said. "Please just talk to him." I didn't reply. I looked at Justin, his eyes steady, and knew we were in this together. Caleb thought he could break me, but he was about to learn how wrong he was. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach, the weight of Caleb's Facebook post still pressing on me. I sat at my desk in our Albuquerque home, the quiet hum of the city outside doing little to calm my nerves. Last night, with Justin's help, I'd sent an email to my editor explaining the post was a personal attack, not truth. Then I'd contacted the manager of Caleb's band, attaching the screenshot Brooke had sent me. I laid out how Caleb was spreading lies about me online, undermining my reputation. I didn't ask them to drop him. I just let the truth speak for itself. By noon, I got a reply from the manager. "We take this seriously. Caleb's out of the gig." I stared at the email, a mix of relief and guilt washing over me. His music was all he had left, and I'd just taken it away. My phone rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was my dad, his name flashing on the screen. I hesitated, my thumb hovering, but I picked up. His voice was calm, almost too calm, like he was choosing his words carefully. "Madeline, I heard about Caleb's apartment, and now his band dropped him," he said. "Do you want to keep pushing your brother away like this? He's family. We're all we've got." His words hit hard, not because they were harsh, but because they weren't. My dad rarely got involved, always staying on the sidelines while my mom fought Caleb's battles. Hearing him now asking if I wanted to lose my family made my chest tighten. I took a deep breath. my voice steady but cold. He made his choice, Dad, I said. I'm not helping him anymore. There was a long pause, then a quiet sigh before he hung up. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Justin was at work, but I could still hear his voice from last night urging me to stand my ground. He'd been right about everything: my family's expectations, Caleb's lies. I'd spent years carrying Caleb, thinking it was my job as the older sister. But after that post, after he tried to ruin my career, I was done. I opened my laptop, checking my emails to distract myself, when a new message popped up. It was from Caleb, the subject line blank. I braced myself and clicked. Madeline, I know you saw the post, it read. I was just venting. Things got out of hand. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Can we talk? I need help getting back on track. Not a single sorry. Not even a hint of regret. Just more excuses. More demands. He admitted to the post but spun it like it was a misunderstanding, like I was the one overreacting. I could almost hear his voice, that same entitled tone he'd used for years, expecting me to clean up his mess. I closed the email, my hands shaking with anger. He thought he could talk his way out of this like always, but I wasn't falling for it. I stood up, pacing the living room, trying to shake the frustration. Caleb's email wasn't an apology. It was a negotiation, a way to pull me back into his chaos. I thought about my dad's call, his quiet plea for family. For years, I'd been the one holding everything together, the one who paid for, gave fixed. But Caleb's post wasn't just a jab, it was a betrayal, one that could have cost me my career. I wasn't going to let him off the hook. It had been a few days since Caleb's email, where he admitted to spreading lies about me, but tried to brush it off as a misunderstanding. His words still stung, a reminder of how far he'd gone to hurt me. My career as a journalist was everything I'd worked for, every late night, every pitch, and I wasn't going to let his betrayal take it away. I was about to dive back into my magazine pitch when an email from Brooke, my friend and colleague, popped up. The subject line was blunt. Got what you need. I opened it, my pulse quickening. Brooke had been relentless, digging into the claims Caleb made online about my supposed debts. She'd reached out to a contact at my bank, and attached to her email was a clean official statement. No outstanding loans, no missed payments, nothing to suggest I was drowning in debt. It was exactly what I needed to shut down his lies. But Brooke didn't stop there. She reminded me of Caleb's email, the one where he admitted to posting the rumors. Send this with the statement, she wrote. It ties him to the post and proves it's all fake. I leaned back, a spark of clarity cutting through the anger. She was right. This wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about showing exactly who was behind the attack. I drafted an email to my editor at the paper, my fingers moving with purpose. The online claims about my finances are false, I wrote. Attached is a bank statement confirming my accounts are clean, along with an admission from the person who posted the rumors. I included Caleb's email, careful not to linger on its contents, just letting it speak for itself. It wasn't an apology, he'd made sure of that, but it was enough to prove he'd lied. I'd spent years keeping my finances in order, building a reputation I could stand behind. Caleb's post had tried to tear that down, but I wasn't going to let it. I hit send, my heart pounding, and waited. A few hours later, my editor replied. Thank you, Madeline, the email read. We've reviewed your documentation and the admission. The magazine is satisfied and your contract is secure. Let's schedule a call to finalize the project details. I stared at the screen, a wave of relief crashing over me. The contract, the one I'd poured everything into, was mine again. My name, my credibility was intact. I closed my laptop, a quiet sense of triumph settling in. Caleb had tried to ruin me, but his lies had fallen apart under the weight of the truth. Justin, my husband, came home from work, his keys jingling as he walked into the kitchen. I showed him the editor's email, and his face lit up with a grin. You nailed it, he said, pulling me into a hug. He thought he could break you, but you turned it around. I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. For years, I'd been the one holding things together, cleaning up Caleb's messes, thinking it was my job as the older sister. I'd paid his bills, covered his failures, all while he took it for granted. But that post, those lies, were a line he couldn't uncross. I wasn't just protecting my career, I was protecting myself. It had been over a week since the chaos started, and with my magazine contract secured, I was ready to move forward. I sat at my desk finalizing notes for the magazine project when I opened my phone and saw it a flurry of notifications from the local Facebook group where Caleb had posted his lies. The comments had turned against him. Someone had shared the band manager's statement about why Caleb was dropped his lies about me, had gotten around, and people weren't holding back. Spreading rumors about family. That slow one comment read. Another called him out for dragging my name through the mud. The group full of locals and musicians was tearing into him, his credibility in the Albuquerque music scene shredded. I scrolled through, my heart pounding, not with guilt, but with a strange sense of justice. Caleb had tried to ruin me, and now his own actions were biting back. I closed the app, my resolve hardening. I'd heard through a colleague that Caleb had moved back to my parents' house, his plans for a music career stalled. My mom and dad had taken him in, as they always did, giving him a room to crash in while he figured things out. I could picture him there, surrounded by the same boxes I'd once helped him pack, still expecting someone to bail him out. But that someone wasn't going to be me. I'd cut him off his apartment, his credit card, his chances to lean on me. I wasn't just done helping, I was done with him entirely. No more calls, no more texts, no more chances. I blocked his number. My fingers steady and felt a weight lift. Justin, my husband, walked in, his work bag slung over his shoulder. I showed him the Facebook comments and he raised an eyebrow, a small smile tugging at his lips. "He's getting what he deserves," he said, sitting beside me. "You did the right thing, standing your ground." I nodded, my throat tight with a mix of relief and finality. Justin had been my rock through all of this, seeing through Caleb's chaos when I was still caught in family guilt. With him by my side, I felt ready to let go of the past and focus on what mattered. I turned back to my laptop, diving into the magazine project with a new sense of purpose. The editor had scheduled a call to discuss my first draft, and I was already outlining ideas for a feature that could make waves. My career was mine again, stronger than ever, and I wasn't going to waste it. I thought about the years I'd spent carrying Caleb, believing it was my job to keep him afloat. Every bill I'd paid, every mistake I'd covered had been a brick in a wall I didn't even realize I was building. His betrayal, those lies about my finances, had torn that wall down, and I wasn't rebuilding it. I stood up, pacing the living room, my mind clear, but heavy with the truth. Family was supposed to mean something, but Caleb had shown me it didn't have to mean everything. My parents might never understand, might always see me as the one who broke things by refusing to help. But I wasn't the one who broke this. Caleb's choices, his lies, his entitlement had consequences, and for the first time, I wasn't shielding him from them. I looked out the window at the fading light, feeling a quiet strength. I'd fought for my name, my career, and I'd won. Justin joined me, his hand resting on my shoulder. "You're free now," he said, his voice soft but certain. I nodded, a small smile breaking through. I was free not just from Caleb, but from the role I'd been forced into for years. The lesson was hard-earned but clear. Setting boundaries isn't just about protecting your career or your name, it's about protecting yourself. Caleb's lies had cost him his reputation, his independence, and any chance of my help. I wasn't going back. My future was with Justin, with my work, with the life I'd built on my own terms. And that was enough.
What the hell is this, Jessica? Are you spying on me now? Richard slammed his phone down on our kitchen counter so hard I thought the screen might crack. His face was flushed with anger I'd rarely seen in our 27 years of marriage. "I was just wondering where the money went," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Our savings account is practically empty. 30 years of retirement funds just gone." "You checked our accounts without asking me? You're paranoid and controlling." He ran his hands through his salt and pepper hair in exasperation. This is exactly the problem with our marriage. You don't trust me to handle anything. Richard, $487,000 doesn't just disappear. I have a right to know. A right? He laughed harshly. You haven't worked in 20 years. That money is from my career, my sacrifices. The words stung like a physical slap. I had given up my career as a paralegal to raise our 3 children while he climbed the corporate ladder at Midwest Financial. We had agreed together that one of us would be home for the kids. It had been our decision, our shared sacrifice for our family. If you can't trust me, maybe we shouldn't be married anymore, he continued, his voice suddenly cold and deliberate. Maybe a divorce is what we need. I felt the blood drain from my face. Are you serious? After 27 years, you'd throw everything away rather than just tell me where our retirement savings went? Instead of answering, Richard stormed upstairs. I heard drawers opening and closing, closet doors slamming. When he returned, he had a suitcase in hand. I need some time away from your accusations. I'll be back when you've calmed down and are ready to apologize. Apologize? For asking about our financial future? He was already heading for the door. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk. Don't try to contact me. I need space. The door slammed behind him, leaving me standing in our suddenly too quiet house in suburban Chicago. My hands were shaking as I sank into a kitchen chair. My name is Jessica Weber, 52 years old, and the life I thought I had, stable, secure, predictable, had just imploded in the span of 20 minutes. 3 kids, all now in college or beyond, Olivia in medical school, Thomas finishing his master's degree, and Zoe in her 2nd year of undergraduate studies. A husband of nearly 3 decades who had just threatened divorce rather than explain a vanished bank account. With trembling fingers, I unlocked my laptop and logged into our online banking again, hoping I'd somehow misread the numbers. But the balance remained the same. $3,218.74 in our retirement account that should have held over $490,000. As I scrolled through recent transactions, I noticed something I'd missed before. A wire transfer from 2 weeks ago when I'd been visiting Olivia at medical school, and it had been sent to an account I didn't recognize, under a name that made my stomach twist. Diana Blackwell. Richard and I met in college. He was the ambitious business major. I was studying criminal justice with plans for law school. We married young, just after graduation, both of us eager to build a life together. When Olivia came along 3 years later, we made the decision that I would put my career on hold temporarily. Temporary became permanent as Thomas and Zoe followed, each 2 years apart. I never resented the choice. I loved being present for my children, watching them grow, helping shape who they would become. Richard thrived at work, moving up steadily from analyst to senior management. We were a team. He provided financially, I managed our home and family. At least that's what I'd always believed. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but whose is? We weathered the normal storms, financial pressures when the kids needed braces all at once, Richard's stress during company restructuring, my mother's long illness before she passed. Through it all, we'd stood together. Or so I thought. Things began to change about a year ago. Richard started working later, traveling more frequently. He became protective of his phone, angling the screen away when I entered the room. When I mentioned these changes, he dismissed my concerns as paranoia, blamed work pressure, accused me of not understanding the demands of his position. I wanted to believe him. After all, what did I know about corporate finance? My world had been schedules and homework, doctor appointments and grocery shopping. So I pushed my doubts aside, telling myself that marriage required trust. Still, small inconsistencies accumulated. Dinner reservations appeared on our credit card statement on nights he claimed to be working late. Hotel charges in our hometown when he supposedly had overnight meetings in Minneapolis. A cologne I didn't recognize lingering on his shirts. 2 months ago, I found a receipt for a woman's bracelet from Tiffany in his suit pocket while doing laundry. When confronted, Richard claimed it was a retirement gift for his assistant, Patricia. I called his office the next day under the pretense of confirming lunch plans, only to learn from the receptionist that Patricia had left the company over a year ago. Even then, I hesitated to act on my suspicions. We had built a life together, a beautiful home in Lake Forest, 3 wonderful children, a wide circle of friends. Walking away from 27 years of marriage wasn't something I took lightly. And honestly, I was afraid. Afraid of being alone, afraid of starting over in my 50s, afraid of what divorce would do to our children, even as adults. So I watched, and I waited, and I hoped I was wrong. I kept my concerns to myself, maintained appearances, smiled at dinner parties and family gatherings. And all the while, apparently, our retirement savings were silently disappearing, draining away like sand through an hourglass I didn't know had been turned over. The day after Richard left, I sat at our kitchen table surrounded by bank statements, credit card bills, and investment reports. The more I dug, the worse it looked. Small withdrawals had begun nearly 8 months ago, amounts that wouldn't immediately raise alarms, but which added up over time. Then larger transfers started 3 months ago, culminating in the massive wire transfer to Diana Blackwell. I Googled the name, but nothing significant appeared. I checked Richard's friends on social media, but found no connection. Who was this woman, and why had my husband given her our life savings? My phone chimed with a notification. It was from Instagram. Someone had tagged me in a post. Strange, since I rarely used social media. I opened the app and froze at what I saw. The photo showed Richard on a beach, his arm around a woman who couldn't be more than 35. Her blonde hair cascaded over bronzed shoulders, and she wore a diamond tennis bracelet that caught the sun. The caption read, "Paradise with my love. Sorry not sorry, Jessica. He's mine now. Upgraded life. Richmond benefits." The location tag showed Bora Bora. The profile belonged to Diana Blackwell. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone. A direct message notification appeared. From Diana again. I opened it to find more photos. Richard and Diana shopping in designer stores, dining at exclusive restaurants, lounging on the deck of a private yacht. The final image was of Diana holding up a bank statement, our bank statement, with a message scrawled across it. "Thanks for funding our new life." The last text simply read, "He says you'll take him back. You always do. Pathetic." I ran to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left but bitter bile. When I finally slumped against the cool tile wall, something shifted inside me. The shock and hurt gave way to a burning rage unlike anything I'd ever experienced. This wasn't just an affair. This was calculated theft and humiliation. My husband hadn't just betrayed our marriage. He'd stolen our future, and was flaunting it publicly, allowing his mistress to taunt me with the evidence. I returned to the kitchen and stared at the financial documents spread across the table. With sudden clarity, I realized I'd been approaching this all wrong. This wasn't just a marital problem, it was a crime. Richard hadn't merely withdrawn our savings. He had systematically defrauded me of my financial security and retirement. As the wife of a financial executive, I'd absorbed more than I realized over the years. I knew about community property, about fiduciary responsibility in marriage, about financial fraud. Most importantly, I knew exactly who to call. I picked up my phone, surprising myself with how steady my hand had become. My friend Valerie had gone through a brutal divorce 3 years ago. She'd mentioned the name of her divorce attorney, a woman who specialized in high-conflict cases involving financial misconduct. Before I could second-guess myself, I dialed the number. "Hello, I need to speak with Catherine Wilson. It's urgent." As I waited to be connected, I began taking photos of every document on the table. Richard and Diana had underestimated me severely. They thought I was a passive housewife who would fall apart, beg for reconciliation, and accept whatever crumbs Richard decided to throw my way. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Catherine Wilson's office was sleek and understated. with panoramic views of downtown Chicago. The attorney herself matched her surroundings, polished, professional, with an air of contained intensity that immediately put me at ease. This was a woman who knew how to fight. Financial infidelity combined with actual infidelity, she said after reviewing my documents and the social media evidence. Unfortunately, I see this more often than you might think. Spouses, usually husbands, who decide to start a new life but want to fund it with marital assets. Can we get the money back? I asked, the question that had been haunting me since discovering Diana's taunting messages. Some of it, potentially. The social media posts actually help us. They're evidence that he's misappropriating marital funds. The court doesn't look kindly on this kind of behavior. Catherine tapped her pen against her legal pad. But we need to act quickly before more assets disappear. I recommend we file for divorce immediately and include an emergency motion to freeze all financial accounts. The word divorce still made my stomach clench, but I nodded. Do it. What else should I be doing? Document everything, every call, every text, every expense. And we need a forensic accountant to trace exactly where the money went. I have someone excellent I work with regularly. By the time I left Catherine's office, a weight had lifted. I had a plan, professionals in my corner, and the beginnings of control over my situation. 3 days later, Richard called. His voice was casual, almost cheerful. Hey Jess, I think I'm ready to come home. I hope you've had time to think about your accusations. I nearly laughed at his audacity. I've been thinking a lot, Richard. About many things. Good, he said, clearly mistaking my calm tone for submission. I'll be home tomorrow afternoon. We can talk then. I informed Catherine immediately. She advised me to say nothing about the legal proceedings we'd initiated. Let him come home thinking everything is normal. The element of surprise is to our advantage. We'll have the papers ready to serve him. The following day, I called my children. I'd been hesitant to involve them, but Catherine had gently suggested they deserved to know what was happening. As adults, they needed to prepare for the family changes ahead, and their support would be valuable to me. The conversations were painful but necessary. Olivia, my practical firstborn, immediately offered to take time off from medical school to come home. Thomas, always the peacemaker, struggled to reconcile the father he knew with the man who had stolen his mother's financial security. Zoe, my youngest and most emotional, broke down in tears before her shock transformed to anger. He's been posting pictures with that woman for months, she admitted through sobs. I saw them on Instagram but convinced myself it was someone who just looked like Dad. I didn't want to worry you with something I wasn't sure about. This revelation hit me like a physical blow. The betrayal had been happening in plain sight, visible to my own daughter, while I'd been willfully blind. I'm coming home, Zoe insisted. Thomas, too. We already talked about it. No, honey. Stay at school. Focus on your studies. This is my battle to fight. But my children, now adults with minds of their own, wouldn't be dissuaded. By evening, all three had arranged to come home, Olivia arriving first thing in the morning, Thomas and Zoe by early afternoon. They wanted to be present when their father returned, a united front in support of me. Their loyalty moved me to tears, but also filled me with apprehension. Richard was expecting to find a submissive, apologetic wife waiting for his return. Instead, he would face his children's judgment and a woman prepared for war. His reaction was unpredictable, and I worried the confrontation might turn ugly. That night, alone in what had been our bedroom for nearly 3 decades, I barely slept. Tomorrow would change everything, for better or worse. Olivia arrived at 8 a.m., letting herself in with her old key. She took one look at me, still in my robe, dark circles under my eyes, and took charge in her efficient doctor-in-training way. Mom, shower and dress. I'll make coffee and breakfast. Thomas and Zoe texted that their flights are on time. They'll be here by 1 o'clock. By the time I emerged, feeling marginally more human, Olivia had not only prepared breakfast, but had organized the financial documents I'd scattered across the dining room table. "I've been researching financial fraud and divorce cases," she explained, showing me her laptop. "Did you know Dad could face criminal charges for this? And the mistress, too, if she knew the money was fraudulently obtained." I hadn't considered criminal prosecution. The thought of Richard in legal trouble beyond our divorce gave me no pleasure, despite everything. He was still the father of my children, a man I had loved for most of my adult life. "Let's focus on getting through today," I said, sipping the coffee Olivia had made. Catherine called mid-morning to confirm our plan. Her associate would arrive with the divorce papers shortly before Richard was expected. The forensic accountant had already traced significant portions of the missing money to accounts in Diana's name and to a recently formed LLC registered in Wyoming, a state known for its corporate privacy laws. "The LLC is the smoking gun," Catherine explained. "It was created 3 months ago with Richard as the sole member. Nearly $200,000 has been transferred there. This wasn't a crime of passion, Jessica. He's been planning this for months." The revelation sent a chill through me. While I'd been planning our anniversary trip, scheduling dental appointments, and managing our household, my husband had been systematically preparing to abandon me and steal our retirement. Thomas and Zoe arrived together, having coordinated their flights to meet in Denver. Seeing my 3 children in our family home, united in their support, filled me with a complicated mix of emotions. Gratitude for their loyalty, but profound sadness that we were gathered for such a painful reason. "What's the plan, Mom?" Thomas asked, his expression serious. At 24, he looked so much like Richard at that age that it made my heart ache. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Flight landed. Be home in an hour. Looking forward to putting this behind us." I showed the message to my children and Catherine's associate, Elise, who had arrived with the divorce papers. We quickly formulated a strategy. The children would wait upstairs initially. I wanted to confront Richard myself first, without using the kids as a shield. Once the papers were served, they would join us. As the appointed hour approached, another text arrived, but not from Richard. It was Diana, sending more photos of their vacation and a message that made my blood boil. "He's stopping by to pick up more cash and his golf clubs. Don't embarrass yourself by begging." It's pathetic watching an old woman grovel. I handed my phone to Elise, who documented everything for our case file. But the message revealed something important. Richard wasn't coming home to reconcile. He was coming to collect valuables before disappearing again. Just as this realization hit me, the sound of a key in the front door announced Richard's arrival. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and prepared to face the man who had betrayed me in every possible way. He walked in with the confident swagger of a man who believed he held all the power, suitcase in hand from his trip. His smile faltered only slightly when he saw me sitting calmly at the dining room table, Elise beside me with a folder of documents. "Jessica, what's this? Who is this person?" The moment of truth had arrived, and I was finally ready. "This is Elise Rodriguez from Wilson Family Law," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "She's here on my behalf." Richard's expression shifted from confusion to anger. "You called a lawyer? Jesus, Jessica, that's completely unnecessary. I told you we needed to talk." "Yes, we do," I agreed. "About the $487,000 you transferred out of our retirement accounts. About the LLC you created in Wyoming. About your girlfriend Diana, who's been kind enough to document your spending habits on social media." The color drained from Richard's face. "You've been spying on me? Going through my private financial matters?" "They're not your private financial matters, Richard. They're our marital assets. Assets you've been systematically stealing for the past 8 months. Elise slid the divorce petition across the table. "Mr. Weber, consider yourself served. These documents include an emergency motion to freeze all remaining marital assets, which has already been granted by the court." Richard's composure cracked. "You can't do this. You have no right." "She has every right," came Olivia's voice as my 3 children descended the stairs. The court seemed particularly interested in Diana Blackwell's social media posts, Dad. The ones showing you spending Mom's retirement money. Richard's eyes darted between the four of us, a cornered animal calculating escape routes. This is ridiculous. A misunderstanding. The money is for investment opportunities. Completely legitimate. I was going to surprise Jessica with, "Please don't lie to us anymore," Thomas interrupted, his voice thick with emotion. "We've seen the photos, the messages. We know what you've been doing." "And who you've been doing it with," Zoe added bitterly. Richard's shock at seeing his children quickly morphed to fury. He turned on me, jabbing a finger in my direction. "You turned my own kids against me? This is low, Jessica, even for you. Did you tell them how controlling you've been? How you've suffocated me for years?" "We can see who you really are now, Dad," Olivia said quietly. "Mom didn't have to say anything." Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I knew instinctively it was Diana, probably wondering why he hadn't yet returned with whatever valuables they'd planned to take. "I understand everything now," I said, rising from my chair. "You're not here to reconcile. You're here to gather more assets before disappearing with Diana. Your text said you were looking forward to putting this behind us, but you meant escaping consequences, not repairing our marriage." For a moment, Richard looked genuinely confused. "My text? I didn't—" He stopped abruptly, something clicking into place. "Diana sent that from my phone." This minor admission, the first honest thing he'd said since arriving, hung in the air between us. "You need to leave," I said, keeping my voice level. "Your credit cards have been frozen. The court has ordered that you not remove any personal items of significant value from the house. You can take clothing and toiletries. Everything else stays until we have a full accounting." "This is my house, too. You can't just—" "Actually, she can," Elise interjected. "The emergency order grants Mrs. Weber exclusive use of the marital residence pending further court proceedings." Richard looked from face to face, searching for an ally and finding none. His shoulders slumped momentarily before he straightened, his expression hardening. "Fine. You want to fight? You'll get one. I have access to the best attorneys in Chicago. When this is over, you'll be lucky if I leave you the furniture." As he stormed upstairs to collect his belongings, Zoe began to cry softly. Thomas put his arm around her shoulders, and Olivia moved to my side, gripping my hand. "He's bluffing," Elise whispered. "His assets are frozen. He can't afford the best attorneys in Chicago right now." I nodded, but Richard's threat had struck a nerve. He was desperate and angry, a dangerous combination. In my years as a paralegal and through friends' divorce experiences, I'd seen how ugly these situations could become. Richard had already shown he was willing to steal from me. What else might he do to avoid consequences? This was only the beginning of the battle, and I needed to prepare for whatever came next. 3 weeks later, I sat in Catherine Wilson's conference room surrounded by a team she had assembled. John Patterson, the forensic accountant who had traced Richard's financial maneuvers. Elise Rodriguez, who had become my day-to-day contact at the firm, and Michael Grayson, a specialist in recovering hidden assets. "We've located approximately $320,000 of the missing funds," John explained, pointing to his detailed financial report. "The Wyoming LLC was the key. Most of the money flowed through there to accounts in Diana Blackwell's name. The good news is that these transfers create a clear paper trail of financial misconduct." Catherine nodded. "The judge has ordered the accounts frozen. Both Richard and Ms. Blackwell are prohibited from accessing or transferring these funds pending the outcome of the divorce proceedings." "What about the rest of the money?" I asked. "The other $160,000? "We've traced about $65,000 to vacation expenses, luxury purchases, and cash withdrawals," John replied. "The remaining $95,000 is still unaccounted for, but we have some promising leads." Michael interjected. "Richard set up a consultation with my firm 6 months ago, inquiring about asset protection strategies. He didn't retain us, but the timing is telling. He was already planning this even then." The conference room door opened and Catherine's assistant entered. Mr. Weber and his attorney have arrived for the settlement conference. Catherine gave me a reassuring nod. Are you ready, Jessica? I smoothed down my skirt and took a deep breath. More than ready. We moved to the larger conference room where Richard sat with his lawyer, not the high-powered attorney he had threatened, but a mid-level associate from a decent firm. Richard looked haggard, the confident facade crumbling after weeks of legal and financial pressure. The settlement terms we presented were non-negotiable: full financial transparency, return of all misappropriated funds, and a divorce agreement that acknowledged his misconduct. Richard's attorney began to object, but Catherine calmly slid a folder across the table. Before you respond, you should review these documents. They were delivered to our office this morning. Inside the folder were bank statements, credit card receipts, and hotel reservations, a comprehensive record of Richard's affair and financial misconduct dating back over a year. Most devastating were printed copies of text messages between Richard and Diana, explicitly discussing their plan to drain the retirement accounts and disappear. Diana provided these willingly, Catherine explained. When she discovered the accounts were frozen and she might face criminal charges for knowingly accepting fraudulently obtained funds, she decided cooperation was in her best interest. Richard's face contorted with fury and betrayal. That manipulative bitch. I'd advise against such characterizations, Mr. Weber, Catherine interrupted coolly, particularly given the content of your messages regarding your wife. Richard's lawyer, after reviewing the documents, requested a moment to confer with his client. Their whispered conversation grew heated, with Richard gesturing angrily while his attorney repeatedly shook his head. Finally, they turned back to us. We'll need time to review these materials thoroughly, the lawyer began. The court date is in 3 days, Catherine reminded them. These terms represent your best option, Mr. Weber. Judge Reynolds has a well-documented intolerance for financial misconduct in divorce cases. Richard's shoulders slumped in defeat. Fine, I'll sign. As the lawyers finalized the details, I studied the man I had spent nearly 3 decades with. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only a profound sadness for what we had lost, and a quiet relief that I had found the strength to stand up for myself. Outside Catherine's office, my children waited to drive me home. Our family had been forever changed, but not broken. In the midst of betrayal, I had discovered my own resilience and the unwavering support of the 3 people who mattered most. Is it over? Olivia asked as I approached. This chapter is, I replied, linking arms with my daughter, but I'm ready to start the next one. Richard had expected me to beg for forgiveness when he returned. Instead, he learned that sometimes the person you underestimate the most becomes the one you should have feared all along. 1 year later, I stood in the doorway of my new lakefront condo, watching the movers arrange the last pieces of furniture. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of Lake Michigan, a daily reminder of my fresh start. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago. With Catherine's expert guidance, we'd recovered nearly all the missing funds, and the settlement had been more than fair. Richard's financial misconduct had worked against him in court, resulting in an asset division that favored me significantly. Diana had disappeared from Richard's life as quickly as she'd entered it, once the money was no longer flowing. Last I heard, Richard had taken a position with a smaller firm in Seattle, starting over at 54 with a significantly reduced lifestyle and shattered reputation. My phone chimed with a notification. It was a group text from my children with a countdown. T-3 days until Mom's graduation. After decades away from the workforce, I had returned to school to finish my law degree. Catherine had offered me a position at her firm as a paralegal while I studied, mentoring me through the process. In 3 days, at age 53, I would finally walk across the stage and complete the journey I had started in my 20s. Olivia was flying in from her medical residency in Oregon. Thomas had taken time off from his engineering job in Colorado. Zoe, now in graduate school in Michigan, had been driving in weekly to help me study for the bar exam. I ran my hand along the smooth marble countertop of my kitchen island. My kitchen, in my home, purchased with my settlement and the signing bonus from the law firm that had already offered me a position in their family practice division. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had instead become the catalyst for rebuilding a life that was authentically mine. I had lost a husband but reclaimed myself, my dreams, my financial security, my future. And that, I realized as I gazed out at the endless blue horizon of the lake, was the most valuable asset of all.